Now, on to the next point, the Antinatalist War on Reproduction. The next trend we are going to discuss stems largely from academic circles in the Western world. For a thoughtful article of the current state of academia, let us check the article by Hugo Heathloday, The Downfall of the Universities, which is available for members on our website. Okay, so in the last decade, a worrying trend gains increasing popularity in academic circles and popular discussions about climate change. Sadly, more and more people think that it is immoral to give birth to children because it harms the environment. Let us indulge by clicking the first link. Science proves kids are bad for Earth.
It's the next line, though, that gets me most.
Morality suggests we stop having them.
I mean, before we even go on, how ridiculous is this framing? So just for anyone who's curious, this is from 2017, wasn't it? It's not a new thing, but it's just one of those things that keeps coming up, and it's constant, like, background noise in the progressive sphere where they essentially are continually giving themselves reasons to hate children.
Yes, and it accuses us of bigotry if we want to have children. and it has this wonderful subtitle. We need to stop pretending kids don't have environmental and ethical consequences.
Children
because usually that is these are the conversations we're having with our spouses.
Yeah. Ethical consequences of having children. That's amazing. But okay, so before we begin, let's just pick apart this headline, right? So science proves kids are bad for Earth. Well, as Josh keeps ranting and raving whenever he sees headlines like this, science doesn't prove things. It provides evidence to suggest things, and then we draw conclusions that we think are appropriate, right? So that's not true. But kids are bad for Earth. It's not true.
There are two things to point here. First is that there's this idea that there's a difference between scientists and science popularizers.
And science. Yeah.
Yes. And usually natural scientists, they're very much in favor of understanding their own fallibility. But science popularizers have to sell books.
That's true. And of course, so does NBC News have to get clicks. But this again is a bad for Earth. Okay, let's take that position. So it's a very we are adopting the conservative position for the objective object that is the Earth. I'm not really bothered about the Earth, to be honest. I think the Earth is going to be just fine either way, right? I don't think that having children is going to destroy the Earth. And this reminds me of an argument that I heard a while ago from just fundamentally anti-human people. They were like, "Oh, we shouldn't mine asteroids." Why? We should leave the universe intact in its pristine natural condition. For who?
Yeah, exactly.
Who's appreciating it if there are no people there to be like, oh, look at this pristine... Like, the universe isn't going to sit there appreciating itself. So it kind of creates this kind of deification and anthropomorphization.
Exactly. It presents the Earth as a person.
Yeah, that is like a
towards Gaia. Who we owe obligations.
Exactly.
We have obligations.
Exactly. Like it's literally like some sort of ancient Greek spirit of the Earth.
The world soul.
Yeah, the world soul. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Neoplatonism.
Yeah, it is, right? And so this is what I showed with the Michael Knowles segment that we did on Monday. That it's just like, look, actually there are religious convictions that underpin this way of looking at the world. And then morality suggests we stop having them. It's like, hang on, morality? Morality is, like, again, as if it's some platonic form that just exists eternally that can give us imperatives out of the ether. That's mental. There's no such way of looking at it. I mean, any human morality surely begins within humans.
It has to, because human morality has to be viewed from a human perspective.
Sure.
Trying to view life from a God's eye point of view risks the loss of our humanity. And this makes for the substitution of abstract considerations of humanity in favor, as opposed to viewing life from a human perspective.
But it's also total BS. Not one of the people writing this is capable of taking on a universe view of the universe. Like, you can't look at the universe from the perspective of the universe. All they can do is look at the universe from the perspective of a human, because they are humans with eyes and senses, and that's how they get all their information, just like the rest of us, right? And so anyone who pretends that, oh no, I'm taking the Earth's perspective on humanity, what they're really saying is, I'm taking my biases on what I think the Earth's perspective of humanity would be. And so, no, I'm not like, this is just total nonsense. Before we go a step further...
Are you sure you're not politically incorrect against the Earth?
I'm definitely am. I think the Earth is here for us to exploit. Thank you.
What are its pronouns?
Exactly, I don't know. Presumably she, her, but... But anyway, so I had to stop on that, because I just hate the framing of this entire thing. It shows you how just... It's such a bastardization of the way a person should think about the world. And suddenly they've arrived at the point, it's like, no, children have negative ethical consequences. It's like, no, they don't. You're sick.
Let us see why the author says this. Yeah. I quote from the article. I'm not endorsing this. I'll just quote what I read from here.
Yeah.
So don't tell me that I embrace these views. Okay. So... A startling and honestly distressing view is beginning to receive serious consideration in both academic and popular discussions of climate change ethics. According to this view, having a child is a major contributor to climate change. The logical takeaway here is that everyone on Earth ought to consider having fewer children.
Okay. Childless academics don't want to perform the physical and emotional labor of continuing their own species, because it would simply be easier not to. And this is a post hoc rationalization of why it's okay that they are losers and childless in their old age. That's what I'm taking away from this. And you might be like, that's a strong statement, but I've met many of them, because I used to work in the research councils.
I think I can't disagree much. I mean, I was 8 years in a university. I met many good people, but I also think that the profile you are describing
it's true, right?
Is to an extent accurate.
And the thing is, right, I hate to leap into Burke already, but again, if you were some highly intellectual academic who's like, well, listen, we need to talk about women's unpaid labor. It's like, okay, but what about the unpaid labor of the people you expect to produce the human beings you think you're going to pay for using your pension to take care of you in your old age? Because this is something that, look, I realize that it seems strong for me to be like, look, I actually think you have a moral obligation to have children and continue your own civilization, because there are a lot of millennial feminists who are like, are you saying that I've done the wrong thing? Yes, I'm saying you've done the wrong thing. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying that you were sucked into this, but you expect someone to be there to take care of you. And so you're relying on a certain kind of labor, the raising of children, that other people had to do, but you find yourself to be in some way exempt from. And I'm sorry, I just don't agree. So I'm actually taking quite a hardline stance on this these days. Sorry, that was radical. Go on.
Let me continue the quote. And here is where it gets sad. Although culturally controversial, the scientific half of this position is fairly well established.
Oh, is it? Is it?
Apparently.
Oh, okay.
Several years ago, scientists showed that having a child, especially for the world's wealthy, is one of the worst things you can do for the environment. Close quote.
Too bad for the environment.
Yeah, but if you're wealthy, and I'm willing to bet that they are going to add, if you come from the West.
That's what they mean by wealthy. Because they're going to be like, well, your carbon footprint, it's 3 times higher than someone in Africa.
Now, let's move on to the next link, because here is where ecology meets feminism.
Oh, yeah.
Again, I quote from the text. There's plenty of talk these days about foregoing children for the sake of the environment. But are people really opting out of the reproduction route? Reducing the amount of meat we consume, avoiding air travel. These are just some of the individual measures people can take to help reduce their carbon footprint and fight climate change. But of all the behavior changes people can make, one of the most effective, according to researchers at Lund University in Sweden and the University of British Columbia in Canada had to be in it.
Of course it
is to have fewer children.
Or just kill yourself when you get sick.
To put it into perspective, a baby produces roughly 58 tons of CO2 per year. It's like an SUV or...
I love it. In
In contrast, the combination of a vegetarian-only diet minus 0.8 tons, stopping air travel, minus 1.6 tons, and cutting car use, minus 2.4 tons, saves approximately 4.8 tons per year.
How the hell do they come to those conclusions? Those numbers? Cutting car use. Well, how much am I cutting my car use? Never using a car. But what if I use the car twice as much as a normal person? So now I'm saving 4.8 tons. These are totally arbitrary numbers.
And but it's interesting to look at the difference, because it shows that baby production of CO2 is 10 times.
I just don't believe that.
Is more than 10 times.
Yeah.
But
also it gives them an excuse to be saintly, doesn't it? It's like, look, I'm not going to do the labor of continuing our civilization. I am just going to be saintly. I'm going to have my vegetarian diet. I'm going to reduce my air travel and car use. And then I can sit on my own and feel like I'm connected to the earth. I hate it. It's totally anti-human.
Yeah. It's, well, I can't, there isn't much to say.
No. These people are lunatics.
Let me continue with a quote. And while not having children, or only having one, to save the planet may seem a bit of a drastic recourse, it's an idea that seems to resonate with a growing portion of environmentally conscious young people. Whether they would actually put the idea into practice is another question. It's also difficult to quantify the impact of the discourse, but it's clearly an idea that is out there and that young people are taking seriously.
I love the
close quote.
In the United States, these young people even have a catchy name, GINKS, short for Green Inclination, No Kids. So it's short for people who want to be kept in a permanent state of arrested development. Because one of the reasons that you have children is so you can fully mature into being an adult.
And they have a nice excuse for it.
They do. I don't ever need to
I don't participate in the business of
being a human
being, and I invent this justification.
And it's so obviously self-serving as well. It's like, I don't want to have children because I'm just sat at home smoking weed and playing video games and doing all that. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. And what happens when everyone does that? Well, the civilization collapses and you don't get healthcare when you're old because there's literally no one to take care of you.
Well, they could reach a state of epiphany with weed.
Maybe.
And maybe they'll change their minds.
No, I'm actually on the South Park train when it comes to weed. It's not evil. It just makes you be okay with being bored. That's a great way of describing it.
I think it messes up with your brain cells.
Oh, it probably does, but any drug does, But it's not intrinsically evil or anything. It just gives you a lack of motivation.
An interesting thing to notice about this is that this kind of rhetoric is weaponized by the left. It is spread in universities, and it's interesting to raise some questions about it. So the message is give birth to fewer children. But we can ask, who is the messenger? Who is the recipient of the message? And what is the broader cultural context in which this message is spread? So the messenger is an environmentalist, let's say.
The science.
Or messengers are environmentalists.
But they're also people in positions of academic importance often. Here's a study we have done. Here is the data. Here's the science. So actually, you can filter this down to the person who's like, yeah, no, I don't want kids, and I shouldn't have kids. Oh, it's for the earth. It's like, okay.
And ESG could be behind it because there's the environmental investing. Yes,
that's absolutely
we are
right.
actually contributing to fewer children being born.
As if that's a good thing. It's crazy.
So the recipient of the message is Western audiences, particularly students. And lately, and this is where the link between ecology and feminism comes into it, women occupy more places in academia than men.
Yep.
And the broader cultural context in which this message is communicated is the Western sphere. It is the sphere of countries that face dire demographic problems and are threatened with population collapse.
But also,
this kind of rhetoric actually tries to justify and tell us that it is a good thing.
And also
that there is less of us.
No, absolutely.
There are less of us.
And also you're going to be, as you say, like now it's majority women in universities. Okay, so if my assessment earlier that it's childless academics post hoc rationalizing why they're going to be dying alone and why they haven't done their duty to their own civilization, there are going to be a bunch of women now who are incredibly well credentialed, who are earning very nicely, but are also alone and are currently feeling a great emptiness inside of them that is the maternal instinct that they have been suppressing this whole time. And this gives them a framework to say, no, that is just me being selfish. That is just me being anti-environmental.
Exactly.
That's
and this
me hurting Mother Earth.
There's a profound insight into this, because on the one hand, they glorify the Earth. The Earth is pristine and should be protected. But on the other hand, they are criticizing nature. And they say human nature has placed us under the yoke of the tyranny of reproduction.
Yeah.
So
that's
a contradiction.
That's a great point.
We should protect nature, which places under tyranny.
Yeah. That also, like, if you think about it as well, there's nothing more natural than a woman giving birth to a child, and what's unnatural here is the stigmatization of children. Like, that's just never happened before.
Yes.
Everyone everywhere loves their children and loves to have children, because children, they genuinely do make your life better and richer. And so, like you say, they're now stigmatizing nature in order to protect the earth, as if that's not nature itself. That's a great contradiction. I hadn't even seen it. Good spot. I hate to say it, but we're running out of time on this one. So
okay. So let us talk about a case. Let us end with a positive note.
Go on.
It's good to remind environmentalists of their glorious past, especially when they put their minds to work and they actually gave a solution to a problem. Let us remember the classic case of cow farts.
Go on. Very high-minded.
Yes. Let me quote from... Let us play the next video too. I think the video can introduce this far better than I can do.
Scientists are working hard to make cows, sheep, and goat farts less harmful to the planet. In 2015, agricultural researchers fed sheep seaweed, and as a result, their farts and belches contained 70% less methane. In 2016, another group gave garlic to cows and found a 50% reduction in methane. There are 1.5 billion cows in the world, chewing, belching, farting, and pooping, and each cow can produce up to 500 liters of methane per day. That's comparable to the amount of methane from an average car. Once in the atmosphere, methane helps keep the planet warm, making it one of the major culprits behind climate change. Reducing methane can drastically affect global warming.
Exactly. So it is easy to get carried away by the fun of it, but there's an interesting thing to be noted here, that was a problem, a perceived problem, and they put their minds to work, and they came up with a solution. The same thing happened with a person, I do not remember the name, but it's with cleaning plastic from the ocean.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, he put his mind to work, and he came up with a solution. So I think that rather than telling people that they shouldn't have children, we should put our minds to work and come up with a solution again.
Yeah, rather than twisting ourselves to be evil husks of what a human being used to be, stigmatizing children. Like, have you ever seen the film Maleficent?
No.
It's a feminist retelling of the evil stepmother in Snow White, I think it is. But the point is, you can see that there's a kind of anti-child streak of cruelty in this film, and I just can't stand it. The idea that, like, it should be a message that's promoted or just encouraged in any way is just totally awful to me.
Yeah,
I can't take it.
It's important to end this by setting the record straight. The idea is that we are not going to forego parenthood in order to save the environment. The idea is that we should improve the environment that sustains us in order to live the kinds of lives that we consider meaningful. And for the overwhelming majority of us, a meaningful life is a life with children.
We hope you enjoyed that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, and we'd all like to wish you a very Merry Christmas. Maybe this year, a good gift might be a £5 subscription to access all of the premium content on our website, such as articles like these from our guest contributors, Reschooling or Human Sabotage, written by Dr. Stephen Hicks, author of Explaining Postmodernism, with an audio track read by Jonathan Crow for our silver tier members. And if you'd like to see the rest of the content we're putting out, you can follow us on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.